TongFu versus Fnatic.
And we're back for game number 2 of this best of 3. An East versus West showdown. TongFu getting the best of Fnatic in pretty damn convincing fashion, if we're to be completely honest, Rascal. I haven't seen Fnatic. Fnatic isn't a team that really loses like that most of the time. But 22 minutes, give or take, all the time it took for TongFu to completely dismantle their game plan. And really it all began and ended with that offensive trialing. As the guys at the desk talked about, the draft, it all made sense. But when it came to execution, TongFu was just on a completely different level.
You know, I want to really talk about TongFu's strategy in the first game. It was super standard, like they were saying. Back during TI2, especially, those picks were so common. Everybody knew how to deal with it. But Fnatic, they took a very interesting approach. The strategy that they actually picked could have worked just as easily as it could have failed. And in that sense, it feels a little bit thin, because if you get behind, you're always going to be behind. You're not really going to have any comeback potential. But that's why they picked heroes like Prophet to try to supplement it a bit. But we just saw that TongFu were just a train. They could not be stopped. So for the second game, if you're Fnatic, maybe go back to your roots a little bit more. I feel even though Fnatic is a team who can play a lot of things, that was a stretch for them. I feel as though that might not have been as comfortable as something that they could have played. And obviously you don't want to go down to the lower bracket already. There's a lot of great teams down there. I mean, of course, it is the International, so even the lower bracket's stacked. But yeah, first pickup coming here from Fnatic is going to be a Lifestealer, and they give away a Bat +1.
Bat +1, and here's the thing, you know, giving away the Bat +1 to first pick something else, if it's an IO or perhaps even an OD, that's one thing. You know, getting the Lifestealer, and Fnatic loves their multi-core lineups. That's no secret. They love to build lineups around the Lifestealer, a Lone Druid, a Gyrocopter, those heroes that all can function well in the mid-game, but function much better whenever they can give each other some relief from the pressure. But now, the Visage pick given away, and you have a Bat Rider that is an innate counter to your Lifestealer. But of course, you know, giving it away, they knew the Bat was going to be picked, so the lasso that goes through Magic Immunity, that's one way to shut that LS down. But this is why. This is, as you said, like in game 1, it was a lineup that Fnatic, you know, they can run it, but it was a departure from their sweet spot, a departure from what they're best at. Lifestealer and Chen, that's what they're best at.
I like this a lot more already, just because Eric gets his Lifestealer. How many times have we seen him on that hero just dominate? Every time I see him play a Lifestealer game, he's something like 15-1 and some other ridiculous number. It's like he has never, ever had a bad Lifestealer game. So I do love the fact that Fnatic's able to get that first. But TongFu start off with a ridiculously strong first two. So if you're Fnatic in this situation, typically when you see things like Bat Rider, I love the strategies that revolve around having so many high priority targets that you can't really pick and choose, because the Bat Rider has to look for the golden opportunity, which you don't really want to give him. So we'll see if they want to add anything. I was actually going to say DK, but of course TongFu take the liberty of banning that out. So not really much of a surprise. We've seen the Lifestealer DK together. It's unstoppable death machine, basically. Just kills all your outer two towers. I think if you get both of those heroes, you should just spawn with no tier 1s.
There you go. You know, something we've seen Fnatic run very frequently. They got away from it from a while, but you and I want to say we actually saw them do it in the prelims. I mean, to be honest, all the games start to run together when you do that many in such a short stretch. But they love to do a Lifestealer plus a Lone Druid plus a Chen. That kind of a lineup, especially if you can get the Lone Druid off to a very good start, it's so hard to stop, because you can just let the bear take a lot of the damage, let him slow push. You can use the magic immunity from Rage on Lifestealer, go in, take a few swipes, back out, and just wait for it to come off cooldown over and over and over. And the idea, and this is something I actually talked about a lot with Puppy whenever I was casting with him during the G1. Whenever you think about Lone Druid, the proper way to look at that hero isn't what the bear does, it's how do you get past the bear. Because at any point in the game, unless you just pick him off by himself, which granted a Bat Rider is going to be able to do very effectively, unless you just do that, you're always thinking, how do I get past the bear to get to the other heroes that I need to get to? And in many cases, and especially with the Chen on the lineup already, when he has Hand of God, the longevity that's going to give them in team fights, plus all of the creeps and Lifestealer's innate skill set, you can see how this kind of lineup can get out of control very quickly. But TongFu, grabbing a team fight hero in their own right, they've got 3 damn strong picks coming out now with the Gyrocopter.
And the Gyrocopter, of course, like you said, solidifies a lot of team fight. The thing about TongFu is they still have a lot of options. If they wanted to, they could go aggressive. It's less likely on Dire's side. But I was actually talking to Era this morning about it, and he brought up a really, really good point. If you're Dire side and you're running an aggressive tri-lane, there's a lot more spots you can actually ward the pole camp, and it's a lot harder to deward, whereas the Dire pole camp, you can deward it pretty much every time with 2 sentries. There's not going to be any issues with that. So we'll see if TongFu want to try to do that. I have a feeling they won't, just because they have a 1-game lead right now, and it's really safe to just go let the Gyrocopter farm, have the Visage, pick maybe another hero. Nyx actually is still in the pool, and that was a really common dual support that we've been seeing during this tournament, and you can just use that to roam. But of course, we haven't seen what Fnatic's going to be fielding mid just yet. They need another support, and they of course need Trixie's hero as well. So I think Fnatic, though, given I haven't seen the third pick yet, I just feel comfortable with them on those heroes. I mean, that's the best way I think I can put it.
No, I exactly agree. It's like this third pick, it almost doesn't matter. Like they, having the Gyrocopter taken away, they already had the DK ban. Those are two good options that function in that way I mentioned. There's just this subset of heroes, this subset of carries that do have late game potential, but they can do a lot so long as they're able to run in a multi-core lineup. And two of those, the Gyro and the Lifesteal, are already picked up. And we can see Fnatic burning through their time, taking their sweet time with this third pickup. And this is really going to give us the complexion of the lineup. It's actually going to be a Venomancer. So Venom, one of those heroes that used to be immensely popular, even going back to the International 2012. We saw him picked and played very frequently there. But now whenever you look at what they're going to be able to do, it is very difficult to engage into a Veno, especially if you're a bad rider before Force Staff. Getting galed after you jump in and try to lasso, then try to pull him back. And then the Storm Spirit now, pick up from TongFu. I'll tell you what, it looks to me like TongFu is ready for this Fnatic lineup. And we talked about it last game whenever we saw the Chen and how it worked in their lineup. This time, obviously, Fnatic the one rocking the Chen, but TongFu is just willing to fight. When you have two of the best initiators in the entire game in Bat and Storm, and now Fnatic finally gets their initiation, but the damage output from TongFu has the potential to be immense.
If the Storm initiates on you or the Bat initiates on you with that team, it's going to be really hard to save you, even if you get sent back, even if you get Chen healed, because of the Visage Burst and Gyrocopter, of course, on top of that. It's going to be a lot of pain in a nutshell. And the Puck pick was necessary for Fnatic. They couldn't not pick Puck here. If they didn't, they'd have nothing to deal with Storm. In the laning phase, Puck is going to edge out Storm, not by a large margin, but he'll be able to do quite well. And the Bat Rider could be in the offlane in this situation, which means TongFu probably need one more support. But of course, people have been known to throw curveballs before. I just feel as though Fnatic is a lot more standard in their pick. They've basically taken TongFu's approach in Game 1 here and Game 2. And of course, they're going to be looking for Trixie's heroes still. They're probably not going to be going aggressive, but they might be anticipating that TongFu are.
Right.
Typically, when you have a hero like a Venomancer, it offsets the imbalance of picking what people refer to as greedy heroes, and all that really means is you're not really great at fighting early,
right.
Whereas I don't know if any other support other than Veno can compensate for it that well. So it looks like TongFu's choice is going to be Bane. Kind of surprised that hero made it so far in the pool, actually, when Fnatic first picked a Lifestealer. But I suppose if you're TongFu, you already have the Bat, you feel pretty confident that you're going to be able to control him. So TongFu's lineup is done, and Fnatic, one more to go.
When you look at what TongFu has picked here, I would actually be a little bit surprised that they didn't run an offensive tri-lane. I mean, when you talk about effective heroes that are trying to shut down a Chen tri-lane, whenever you have a Bane, he could Nightmare one of the creeps if you have to. You're going to have Visage. And the Gyrocopter, of course, Gyro, a monster in an offensive tri-lane whenever he has heroes that can allow him to get close. And when you're going to have Nightmare for that, you're going to have Grave Chill out of Visage. That would be so good because it frees up two solo lanes for two heroes that really want a solo lane. And the times that you see Storm Spirit get completely out of control tend to be based on him getting a nice amount of experience, be it out of mid, or being given a solo safe lane, which might be the case as he would be matched up against the Prophet, which would be an annoying matchup for him, but he would still get the levels. He would still get a base amount of gold as Fnatic has completed their lineup with that Nature's Prophet, and this is a flat-out overwhelm you lineup. That's the only way to say it. They just want to get a bunch of stuff and run them into a tower.
Well, that's kind of been the game plan for either team so far in this best of three, at least, you know. So Fnatic, I do favor this kind of a style for them. I think that's pretty much the theme here, is this is more within their comfort zone. TongFu can run a lot of different things. We've seen their versatility in the preliminaries already. The one thing that kind of concerns me for Fnatic is what could potentially happen is the Bat Rider versus the Nature's Prophet, and eventually Bat will be able to overwhelm you just because you can. The Sticky is such a wide radius, so you can typically hit Treants and the Prophet at the same time because you're not going to be getting that far away from the creep wave. So there is risk in that lane, but TongFu could be running in for a level 1 clash here.
Yep, TongFu. And, you know, it's easy to underestimate just how strong a lineup with a Bat Rider is at level 1. If you put your first point in a Sticky Napalm and you're able to catch 1 or 2 with it, it makes it so hard for the enemy team to retreat, plus the bonus damage that comes from his own right click. So any team that has a bad rider in many cases will be pretty willing to at least look into the idea of a level 1 fight. But looks like TongFu only dipping down to drop a ward or two. And this comes down to something you had mentioned. I was actually sitting with you this morning with whenever Era said that. And you know, it's such a good point. Whenever if you're going to offensive tri-lane, in many ways the Radiant side is a little bit more advantageous, especially when it comes to vision and camp blocking. We already see 2 put down, going to make it very difficult for this Chen, especially if they continue. And look at this, another sentry going down to block the hard camp. And that's going to be, you know, No-Tail's going to be a little bit pressed to get a nice start here.
This is going to be horrible if they don't find that other ward, but could be catching Sansheng here.
Yep, there's the open wounds, waiting on help. No-Tail's right behind him, trying to body block him. Here comes Hal, and that's going to be enough to scare him back. Since he had placed his first point in open wounds, he would not have had magic immunity for the Rocket Barrage, and level 1 Rocket Barrage is not something you want to mess with. Now we're going to have a Nightmare onto the Veno, fly caught out, Sansheng still there. And there's the Grave Chill right afterwards. As you see, the damage output immense, and down he goes. Fly, first blood in game 2. Not the start Fnatic wanted, but TongFu already looking big and in charge in this offensive tri-lane.
The offensive tri-lane from TongFu was a little bit obvious, but they wanted to be able to get flying range to go for the Gale there. I think if he had just been a little bit closer, it could have very easily been a first blood for Fnatic. And this is a nightmare right now for Fnatic because their tri-lane has been dismantled. No-Tail can't stay in his woods anymore. He dropped the sentry to try to deward the camp, but they can't actually deward it until they have a flying courier. So he is forced out, which means that it's effectively a 2v3 in bottom, and already Fnatic are going to be having some problems here.
Up at top, we can see Trixie going one-on-one with King J. And No-Tail's there as well. So King J's going to have to be a little bit careful. I mean, he does have Firefly to fall back on, but we can already see he's in decent shape. And, I mean, really, when these lanes took shape, it looked pretty even. Mu ends up going mid against Hani. And Hani doing a great job, but Mu right there on his tail, 8-7. And, you know, No-Tail just going to be in great shape, or not in great shape, I should say, because, as you had mentioned, the preemptive warding by TongFu, just basically, this just feels like another game where TongFu just knew exactly what they needed to do to knock Fnatic out of their game plan, or at least slow it down.
Really impressive stuff, honestly. It's not often where so early into the game you just have this sense of one team is not going to be having the easiest time in the world, and that's really how I feel about Fnatic right now. The one little bit of solace that they have is that they can go in, they can try to gank Mu, which they're doing right now, actually.
And yep, there we go. In mid, we're going to see the Storm Spirit picked off. And a nice kill from Fnatic as they tie it back up, get a little revenge for the first blood.
And it's really nice moving from No-Tail. He realizes, I can't go top. We can't kill King J. Sprout does nothing against Firefly, and Nature's Prophet doesn't have any innate disables. So really nice choice of lane gank there. The sentry's going to be fading soon from the big camp, so No-Tail should be able to stay in his jungle if he manages to deward the other one that's blocking the big camp here. But still, getting one kill is going to be nice for Fnatic, but I think they kind of have to do more work than that if they want to really fully recover.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, their lineup is basically based on nothing but momentum. Whenever you grab a Nature's Prophet and a Chen, I mean, that Prophet's going to be able to contribute a bit after he gets built up, after his gold gain kicks in, of course. And we'll see how Trixie's going to end up building if he is going to grab a Midas. More and more players have actually been skipping the early Midas to occasionally prioritize other items. But again, yeah, looks like No-Tail's actually going to smoke up. And they're going to try to get more work done as they know they need to do so, because if they don't get the momentum early on, they're just going to end up with one of those stall kind of feelings where maybe they'll get a tower or two.
Courier snipe.
And up here we go. There's the courier. And makes it to the trees just in time. And Trixie going to be playing back at Lee. Well, no, never mind. He's going to run forward to the shop and get himself a set of boots. Down at bottom, we can see Era having a very difficult time. He's sitting at 2 last hits. 2 compared to the 22 of Hal. I mean, really, these lanes are just completely coming apart at the seams, and TongFu just dominating.
TongFu are totally abusing the fact that, like we said, one kill, warding a Chen's camp, really hard to deal with. Era might be in trouble down here, though.
Down at bottom, we're going to see him pursued out. He's trapped inside. Can do nothing but try to find his way out. Blocked in, Rocket Barrage. He's going to rage and do what damage he can, but he knows it's all in vain and now we're actually going to see another kill in mid, but that time going to Fnatic. So Fnatic giving as good as they're getting, but still the gold gain 100% in favor of TongFu. The 3 top in terms of CS belonging, at least in part, to TongFu as it's tied up between Puck and the Storm Spirit.
You know, the one thing that keeps going through my mind right now is that Fnatic weren't expecting an aggressive tri-lane. If you look at Era's inventory, he doesn't have a stout shield. Even if you were planning on going tri versus tri and you have ranged supports against you and a ranged carry, you would pretty much always buy one in that situation. So maybe Fnatic really weren't expecting it, or maybe they just felt super confident, one or the other. I can't really see any reason why Era would start with those items if he thought that TongFu were going to actually be laning against him. But things definitely still going well for them. There's some movement now on the side of Fnatic. Fly and No Tail are going to rotate over mid.
We're going to see Mu locked down for the moment. He's going to blink away. But yeah, no follow-up to the coil. 2-2 it remains. A little bit of movement here and there. But yeah, and this is exactly kind of what I'm talking about. You know, Hani spent the coil, but if they're not real careful, if they don't start making things happen elsewhere, you're going to have this feeling like we saw right there. They just kind of went for it and then petered out. They just couldn't follow it up. They didn't have the confidence to do so. They're going to rotate Fly and No Tail down to bottom now. And Hao and Banana are in position. San Shing's there as well. Centaur going to poke his big snout over across the woods and see that it's not the safest place to be at the moment. Storm's actually making his way through the woods right now, but the Bad Rider has got to be getting close to his blink at this point. Yeah, he's about halfway there.
And once he gets that blink, it's going to get even worse. It's not like normal where you say, do I want to last at the Lifestealer, do I want to go for the Puck, or do I want to go for the Chen? Well, the fact of the matter is, No Tail hasn't really had the most spectacular early game because his jungle got warded, and to his credit, he actually still has 1 kill and 1 assist, so his movement has been great, but he's still playing from behind, so you don't have to emphasize going for that hero as much. In Era, I mean, what can you say? He's got 10 creep kills at 6 minutes. He is definitely not having the time of his life either, so the Bat Rider's job is made easier by the fact that Fnatic are pretty much playing from behind from the get-go. So TongFu, if they want to try to group up and start applying pressure, they can. The one good thing for Fnatic is that Mu has been really, really held down here in middle. He's not even 6 yet.
24 CS to the 32 of Puck. He hung in there in terms of that. I mean, obviously he got beat pretty badly, but not crushed. But yeah, as you mentioned, he's already ducked into the jungle just for fear of being caught out again before he hits level 6. Now we're going to see open wounds on the Hao. There's a Gale as well. Sanshing coming to try and help. Bates there. Does not have Fiend's Grip, and we will see the gyro drop and a Sprout. How beautiful initiation out of Hani. Caught them both with the Waning Rift and the coil, and No Tail, who had about as bad a start as a Chin could hope, or could hate to have, now has 3 kills to his credit, 3-0-2. Fnatic blowing this game back open, and we were talking about momentum, Draskell. This is that catalyst they needed.
They needed that so badly, and they're going to be able to apply a lot of pressure to this tower as well. I don't think TongFu are going to defend. The Gyrocopter is only level 5, so there's no call down. They are going to throw out the Glyph, but since the Bat Rider still doesn't have money for his Blink, I think Fnatic are going to be able to get their first tower of the game right here.
Tower down below half. Yep, not going to be any sort of a true response on Shing's there in case they decide to push on through, and they very well might. I mean, No Tail's got an Ursa. Yeah, they're at least going to test the waters, at least try to force some kind of a reaction. Taking a look at the Bat, he's just short of that Blink Dagger, and for sure if he had it right now, they'd feel much better about taking a fight. Hani still has Coil on cooldown, so any kind of fight, there's actually going to be a Gale thrown out, Banana caught with it, and Fnatic at least getting some work done. However, Hao in the meantime is creep cutting and getting a lot of CS out of this top lane, but looks like Fnatic finally will just give up the Ghost as the last of the creeps die. And mid, Mu even, who is now level 7, so he's going to have that mobility Storm Spirit is characterized by. Doing a little bit of damage to the tier 1, but it looks like both teams ready for a breather, fall back to their respective corners.
I like Fnatic's decision to fall back. No reason to push it too much. You just got a huge turnaround. You don't want to just go and throw that away. And the nice thing is that Hani is not really far behind at all. His CS was actually higher than the Storms until just recently. Mu's been able to recover, of course, due to that bottom gank. But he's going to have his Blink in about 600 gold. That does allow Fnatic to initiate pretty much whenever they see fit. So both these teams have the capability of jumping. I just always really favor Puck initiations because he's actually opted to max Waning Rift, so his silence is going to be 3 seconds, which means in that 3 seconds, you're going to have Era able to hit on pretty much whoever he wants, and he's starting to recover now because TongFu aren't actually sitting against him in the bottom lane. So Fnatic have definitely gotten themselves back into this game in a big way, and I know it's really early, but whenever you have Chen lineups and they're not able to accomplish a whole lot and you're forced to move a lot, it hurts them so bad. So I'm glad to see that Fnatic has been able to come back with that gank.
Yeah, most Chen lineups are kind of like a train. It takes a while to get them up to speed, but once they're there and they have that momentum, it takes a lot to slow them down. And very often you'll just see those kind of lineups derailed, if you follow the metaphor. And not going to be the case this time as Fnatic able to get the engines roaring very early on. 5-2 as we approach 10 minutes. We can see it's a very close game nonetheless. Less than 500 gold separating these two teams. 1,000 experience actually moving in favor of TongFu. But yeah, I mean, when you look at where things were in the gold, TongFu was on the way to a decent lead at this early stage. They were coming up on 1,500. Instead, they managed to turn around and give themselves a 500 gold lead. Now we are going to see TongFu smoking up, and that Blink Dagger going to be shown off, and he's going to try to jump away. Beautiful play by Hani, showing off that APM. The Haste Rune certainly not hurting things either. Elsewhere, we can see the Prophet is hooked up with Era. They might try to split push this as very wisely, and this is just such good sense out of Fnatic, realizing, like, okay, there was probably a whole team there, and they were probably smoke ganking, which means they are completely out of position to defend this this wide side bottom lane tier 2. And they still have their tier 1 up, so perhaps thinking they can trade a tier 1 for a tier 2 here.
Definitely a trade you're going to want to make if you're Fnatic. They're going to TP to it, though, and King J is going to be able to blink away for the time being. I think he's more here to just delay it. I don't think he necessarily can stop it on his own.
Yeah. There's going to be open wounds on him, actually. They can't pursue him over the woods. A lot of damage being done. Era gets him with the Infest. What a play. Now the counter initiation cooldown Zera as is Grave Chill Storm. Going to get some payback with the Vortex. And TongFu answers with a kill of their own. They're going to be able to deny this tower if they time it right. Let's see if there it is. Gyro gets the deny, and in the meantime, that tier 1 is still standing just outside of deny range. Such a heads-up play. Hang on. Fnatic actually going to bring down a tower elsewhere. Now, this is what Fnatic does best, and this is when they look the best. Whenever they're able to control the map to set the tone and pace of the game, and they are just so good at moving in small packs of 2, of 3, and finding openings in lanes, anticipating reactions out of the enemy team, and being elsewhere when those teleports occur to get something done. We are going to see Fnatic smoke up now. They've got 3 smoked up, 1 on the high side, Hani and No-Tail, moving from bottom to top. And the rest of TongFu actually in a very defensive posture right now. They recognize that this is a very tenuous time for them. They cannot afford to make too many more mistakes as they're beginning to fall behind.
Especially since the Chen finishes the mech. That's the big thing here for Fnatic. And because of the fact that the Venomancer went Arcanes, it means Chen doesn't have to waste the money on them. Typically, you'll see people, if they have a really good start, they'll go Arcanes because they know they can get the quick mech. No-Tail, we know he didn't have that good of a start because he had to leave his jungle straight away. So now TongFu are in a situation where they can't actually fight. So they're going to end up trading the tier 1 for the tier 1. Fnatic do not have a glyph. They are going to try to TP to maybe fight this, though.
And up atop, they're going to come on down to the mid lane. That mid tower does end up dropping, but TongFu able to withdraw. Now this is such an awkward position for TongFu. They have 2 of the best single target initiator, gank oriented heroes on their lineup, but as you said, they just don't feel like they can fight at the moment. The Gyro is farming fairly well. He is way ahead in GPM of anyone else on the map. More than 100 GPM lead in terms of what he's generating, and in net worth, he's getting up there quite a bit as well. He's got his Phase and his Aquila. That BKB, you really can't underestimate how important that is whenever you factor in how reliant a Fnatic is on Puck and what he can do. Hani, it basically makes or breaks this team, at least at this stage of the game.
His initiations are going to have to be spot on, more or less. Typically, you want to try to catch the Storm. Bane is nice, and of course, King J and the Batrider would be nice too. The Gyrocopter is okay, but he's going to have a BKB really soon, so yeah, you're not really going to want to initiate on him anymore. The main thing is, you want to prevent your Chen from getting lassoed or went on by the Storm. That's the big thing, because if he can get the Chen and the mech off, or excuse me, the heal and the mech off during the fight, then you're pretty much good to go. I think Fnatic right now are definitely in really good shape, and because of the fact that Trixie, unlike last game when he was doing this build, I felt like when you're behind, going Midas Phase is a little bit risky because you have no real team fight. Now they do. So I think more or less this is the inverse of last game, where TongFu had really good lanes, and I felt like it was going to be tough for Fnatic to deal with, but they pull it out with one really, really good triple kill and push in bottoms. So still anyone's game, of course, but Fnatic, I would like to see them still applying some pressure.
Yeah, I just pulled up the goal graph. That was my concern as well. They have that momentum, but now they're beginning to just kind of peter out. And they're doing this to themselves. It's on them to keep that sense of urgency to make things happen on the map. TongFu is happy as can be to have some time to farm up some more items, especially on that Gyro. Gyro's item progression, absolutely huge. because they're relying on him to not only survive in these fights, to continue to pour out magic damage with Rocket Barrage, but they want him to be building physical damage very, very soon. He's already got the phase, which certainly helps, but after that BKB, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him skip going with any kind of a Helm of the Dominator and instead just go straight up with some kind of a damage approach that'll allow them to begin to be a little bit more, basically to put this Storm Spirit and this Bat Rider to use, because so far these two heroes have done very little else other than farm.
Well, Mu hasn't really had a choice, unfortunately. He got ganked twice before level 5, and that is the nightmare if you're a Storm. You do not want to get ganked before level 6, because what ends up happening is you can't escape it. He's very, very vulnerable during that time. So that's actually one thing that worked in Fnatic's favor, is when No-Tail had to leave his jungle, mid actually became easier to gank. So Mu, unfortunately, receiving a couple of deaths in the early game. And they could be going for another one here, but I don't think they have vision of the high ground. Wow, they are so close to getting revealed by Mu.
Honey with a passenger. Oh, this could be bad. There we go. He gets a waiting rift off on one. BKB, though, going to buy House some time. And Era stunned down there. They're going to mech through it. Damage being done on both sides. Hand of God gets it back up. And how? Locked down with the net. What a coil. Got the two they needed. Sanshing chasing Hani away, but the fight now beginning to turn. It's 2 for 1 so far. Mu reinitiating. Flies in trouble. Hani trying to help him out, but one more auto attack, enough to make it a double kill for Mu. Hani trying to bottle through after the phase shift. Trixie's auto attacks enough to force Mu out, and he will be netted. What a play as Fnatic manages to make it a full 5-man wipe and blow this game wide open.
That was superb, honestly, by Fnatic. They walked up the hill, they saw that TongFu was more or less out of position. That BKB just finished. He used a 10-second BKB, and he was so low by the time the rest of his team got there that How simply couldn't fight. I mean, how are you going to fight when you have 20% HP? Era's at full. The Hand of God and the mech were both used. Fnatic just had way too much in the tank for TongFu to compete that fight. But you kind of have to fight it if you're TongFu, because if you just let your carry die and then they walk into the tower, there's a good chance they're going to lose it anyway. So they commit. They unfortunately make not the best trade in the entire world, and Fnatic just getting more and more momentum here.
And well, but see, here's the problem, Draskell. That fight, as good as it was, as phenomenal as it was for Fnatic, you look at the gold, all that really netted them was about 2,500. And granted, it is still very early on, but the fact that they had that downtime that allowed TongFu to get themselves back into it, to get the gold closer to zero, means that now they have to continue to have that urgency. They don't want TongFu to be able to do what they're doing now, which is smoke and try to take a target of opportunity, and that target is going to be Hani just blown up. I mean, what else can you say? TongFu jumped him immediately, and Hani again, the start and end, the beginning and end of the effectiveness of Fnatic's lineup, no doubt. And we're going to see Fly actually sit home by Chen, and yep, Chen Airways gets him back to safety. But TongFu taking down a very important target there. Boots of Travel actually picked up on this puck, as he wants his mobility to be not just high, but global.
Yeah, the Boots of Travel for me is 50-50. On one side, it does let you be at every single fight, which is a puck. You really want that. Right. That's pretty much the main reason why you buy bots in the hero. The mobility to be able to farm is secondary, because most of the time Trixie or Era are going to be farming what you would teleport to regardless. So that mobility is great, but he has less than 800 health. And I think we've just seen the problem with having less than 800 health when you're against a team who has a Blink Initiator and somebody who has darn near global initiation in the Storm. So once the Orchid is done on Mu, that puck is going to become food for him if they're not fighting in the 5 versus 5. So I don't know, man. The Boots of Travel for me, I'm really conflicted on it.
We see the Shadow Blade now done. Hang on, we're going to have an initiation on the Mu. They're going to, oh, Fiend's Grip! Banana in the right place at the right time, and Hani cleaned up. Mu going to be able to jump to safety, and Banana able to slide himself back to safety, because Bane doesn't walk, he slides. He's a boss like that. But 18.5 minutes in, and TongFu, now this is, again, going back to game one, this is the kind of plays I expected to see out of Fnatic. It's a very surgical approach. They are derailing and delaying any future aggression out of Fnatic every time they get a pick like that. And yeah, especially when it's Hani. When it's Hani that's dropping, they just can't do anything without him. And Fnatic staying a long time on their side of the river to be in this kind of shape with this kind of a lineup.
Well, TongFu, the other secondary effect that their ganks are having is, if you look at them right now, King J is actually getting closer to his own BKB.
Yep.
How has a BKB, of course, and Moo's probably going to be making one after his Orchid. And at that stage, heroes like Venomancer, the Puck, the Chen, they fall off pretty significantly. So I think Fnatic probably wanted to have more done by the stage in the game. They've gotten almost every single outer tier tower except for the tier 2 mid. But you want to have map control against TongFu. You don't want to let them have areas to farm, because once that happens, Era had such a poor start that he doesn't have enough right now to really carry the team by himself. And Trixie doesn't either. I mean, Trixie's still farming very well, but they need more time. And the more time that goes on, the less relevant that hero like Venomancer and, to a lesser extent, the Chen actually becomes. So TongFu, I still feel, are doing pretty well for themselves, but Fnatic, they've realized they have to do something, so they're smoked up.
Honey looking for a big coil and a big rift. He is moving so quick, man, with the bonus from smoke, from drums, and from those boots of travel. That is a very quick puck. And they are just north of the majority of TongFu. If they can get an angle here, this could be huge. They're getting in a position on the high ground. Here come the familiars. And dropping down wards. And then now the Venomancer spotted out, as well as the rest of them. So a big missed opportunity. TongFu at an awkward angle there. They just couldn't find the angle of initiation before the smoke wore off. So Fnatic comes away wanting.
That hurts as well. Any waste of time for Fnatic, I think, is a bit amplified. The Nature's Prophet's going to help a little bit, and all Moo ends up getting picked off in middle lane, overstaying his welcome again. I actually don't know why he was there. Oh, maybe I do. Maybe he was waiting for his team to do Roshan.
You see Fnatic charging back out now, coming out in mass, and that's going to force the back from TongFu, waiting for a better opportunity to try Roshan. It's 12-7, 19 kills in a 21-minute game. 3,000 gold, the current lead for Fnatic. The experience damn near even. But when you take a look at the overall net worth, you can see the Gyro still on top. Profits gold gain beginning to kick in, but really Era has recovered so well on this lifestealer. For a while there, he was just in some trouble. It just looked like he was not going to be able to get the start that the lifestealer wanted, but bouncing back, now has his armlet, his drums, and his phase boots, and he's in great shape to fight. But again, it's all about the positioning of the Bane and the initiation. Single target initiation coming out from the Bat and the Storm Spirit. And you can tell, I mean, Fnatic with this kind of lineup and with this kind of lead should be playing a bit more confidently, but there's just no room for error. If they mess up and end up losing one of their key heroes very early on, they just have to back, and TongFu can route them.
Yeah, the thing about TongFu, too, is they can chase so well. I mean, you have a Blink Batrider and you have a Storm. Those are two of the best chasing heroes in the business, especially at this stage in the game. So Fnatic, if they lose a little, they're most likely going to lose a lot in terms of team fights, so I totally agree with you on that front. And with the Orchid finished, if they want to try to go for team fights, I feel like they can. They can actually focus Era with an Orchid, and they can focus the Chen or the Puck, pretty much whatever target they decide is the highest priority at any given point. That's the strength that a Storm with an Orchid actually gives you. Not many heroes can do that because either A, they lack the initiation range, or B, the item progression of just a straight Orchid doesn't really make sense. So I do like TongFu right now in terms of their team fight potential, because the more time that Fnatic spend on their side of the map not really doing anything, it's hurting them more than it's hurting TongFu.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I'm getting on the same page with you. And how often do we see this? Whenever you have this kind of a lineup where a Chen lineup has a lead, and granted it's not huge, but it's considerable enough, and we're going to hang on because this is going to be bad. What a beautiful game. Could not have been more efficient with it, and this is why you ban the Puck when you see a lifestealer early on. You do not want to deal with this combination, especially when you're a mobility-based hero who has to be able to use his abilities to have any chance to defend himself, and a very high priority pick there for Fnatic. And I'd like to see more of that out of them. If they're not going to group and push, they need to at least be moving their heroes around in small packs and looking for skirmishes.
Yeah, that's one nice thing that Boots of Travel also gives you, is that if the Puck is anywhere near the Lifestealer or even the Nature's Prophet, for example, you can just get to the fight right then and there, go for the pick immediately. That is some reach that even TongFu's team with his Storm doesn't have. And every single time the Storm is dead, Fnatic feel incredibly confident because he's one of the only initiators who can go in and maybe go on the Puck and silence him and get back out with no harm basically done. So that opens room for the Batrider to go in, and so on and so forth. Fnatic, they're not going to be able to push the tier 2. Unfortunately for them, Moo is already alive. And the next big team fight, I think, might even just end up in a Roshan kill. I'm not sure if Fnatic would go for the tower this early on because it's still only 23 minutes in. Feels like a much longer game, actually. But if they get a good team fight, they're not going to have the time, I think, to do both. Well, I guess tier 2 mid is actually pretty low. But Fnatic, very aggressively positioned here at the moment, and TongFu are setting up around Roshan right now.
I'll tell you what really scares me for Fnatic is the build how's going, and this is what I was talking about. They're, not going for something like a farming build, going straight for the butterfly. Now, what's going to happen, especially if TongFu is able to take a free Roshan here, it's going to be impossible for Fnatic to really put on any kind of concerted pressure. I mean, they could take a win in a big team fight, but the idea of them being so strong that they could just overwhelm an Aegis on a gyro at this point is really just a little bit of wishful thinking. They're going to get this for free. And Fnatic spending a little bit too much time being cute in the jungle. They're going to end up giving up a free Rosh. That is devastating because it is so, and they actually put it on the Storm as well. So having Mu ready to come back up with a full health bar and full mana bar after he dies in one of these fights and be able to, as we said, chase or clean a fight up, it's going to be gigantic. But the gyro, again, getting a butterfly, once he has magic immunity and he has the evasion of a butterfly, how's Fnatic going to damage it? They just don't have any other way, and it's pretty obvious, but even their magic damage before was not that impressive, and that was negated, but at least they had the lifestealer to fall back on with his right click. Once that's negated, or at least mitigated, it's going to be just so hard for them to be able to bring down that gyro.
They're really going to be counting on Trixie getting a Hex. That's pretty much the salvation for that issue. And the thing is, if he gets the BKB off before the Hex goes out, then the team fight's going to go really bad for Fnatic. Like, as you said, a butterfly is going to make it so he's pretty much untargetable. And if it happens the other way, and they manage to jump him and actually kill him since he was not the recipient of the Aegis, then it'll be a completely different story. But of course, the Hex isn't really even close to being done. Trixie still needs about 2,000 gold for that to happen. And TongFu are actually baiting out the Storm right now, which is interesting because if he has an Aegis, I don't think that Fnatic would go for him anyway. And yeah, I don't really think anything much is going to happen to this.
Yeah, it looks like that Fnatic, not all that interested in taking the bait. But, I mean, more and more, again, this is, Fnatic is, they moved around so much, so well early. And now, here we go. We are going to see Hani look to make something happen again. Trixie, right there, he's got an Invis rune. So trying to bait out the Prophet, making it look as if he's overextended a bit here in the jungle. We can see TongFu's grouped up just north of Hao. The rest of Fnatic is spread out. Oh, if Hani decides to go for this, it could be problems. And let's see how much he is willing to commit. Doesn't look like all that much. He's going to spot him. Is he going to go? He is. Now he's got a lot of help behind him. Hao taking a lot of damage with the Fiend's Grip is there. Hao, cooldowns, has the rest of his team coming. King J there to lasso back Hani. That's a dead puck, and now the Nightmare No-Tail trying to do what he can, but Mu comes in and grabs the Chen. The teleport did work. So Chen trading himself for the lifestealer, but that's exactly what I was saying. If he sees him, that was actually bad that he saw him that time because it was too nice of a target, too juicy of a target to pass up, but he had a whole team behind him at TongFu, getting 2 excellent kills, and this is more time that TongFu has to farm, and more importantly, that butterfly is now complete on Hao. Fnatic has officially run out of momentum, and they're going to have to find a way to get the engine churning again as we approach 30 minutes.
I was saying in my head, I was like, don't do it, man. You're too close to the base. Even if you can't see anybody, there's no one visible on the ward in the jungle. It was a really questionable decision, but maybe Fnatic just feel like they had to do it. Yeah. Maybe they felt like they didn't have a choice. They knew that at some point they were going to basically run out of time, and the Gyrocopter was going to get to a stage where he's not really stoppable. Whereas Fnatic have one real core hero on the Lifestealer, and then I guess you could consider Trixie on the Prophet a secondary core. TongFu has a Storm and a Gyro. And a Storm in this case, I think, is going to be doing a bit more work than the Nature's Prophet will because Prophet just needs more time.
Right.
Whereas Storm goes for a very aggressive item quickly, Trixie needs more time to finish his Hex. And luckily for Fnatic, that time is actually going to be soon. But I do feel like you were saying, TongFu looking to be really good in terms of position right now. The next Roshan is going to be probably 6 or 7 minutes, and TongFu are probably going to be looking to make use of Mu's Aegis before it fades.
Yep, we can see they're smoked up, and the line is drawn, taking them right into the Radiant jungle. This could be a disaster if they're able to get in. If they walk along the line they've drawn, they might be able to get the Chen and have the Vino and the Lifestealer cut off. Here we go. Sanshing spots him. There's the lasso used. Fly never had a chance. Now they're going to pursue it out. And that's actually a lost gem. That's worth mentioning. And they're going to go ahead and try to get the Chen creeps, but not going to work out. But losing the Vino, of all the heroes that could have lost there, that was probably the one they're most likely to absorb. 20 seconds until he's back up. And let's see if they want to push off of it. That Aegis doesn't have very long at all. Yeah, we're talking less than 6 there, about a minute and a half actually, until Mu has his Aegis Fate. He's got 2,600 gold on him, so if he does want a BKB, he's certainly making fine progress towards it. Only needs about another 1,000 gold to put it in his inventory now. And they are going to go ahead and walk down the lane. Looks like there's going to be no contesting of this. Perhaps trying to just get some split push going with Trixie at top.
That's pretty much their only option. They clearly can't defend. They bought the gem for defensive purposes. When you're playing against a team that has amazing initiation, dewarding your jungle is almost a must. You know, you want to make sure that they can't see you, so they feel a bit more hesitant about playing that aggressive. But TongFu, they get it for free. That actually hurts them so badly because, I mean, how can they even afford a gem if you're Fnatic right now?
Yep.
The supports are always going to be very strapped for money, and losing something like that is a massive, massive impact in the game. And Trixie and Hani here inside of the woods for TongFu. They're trying to find somebody, but I don't really think they're going to get the opportunity. The one nice thing is that the Hex is done on Trixie, so if they do catch somebody, they can kill for sure now. It's not going to be like before where Hao was able to get the BKB and his team support. Even if his team is there, if they focus him, he most likely will end up dying.
TongFu playing this very patiently. The Aegis reclaimed in 30 seconds, so it doesn't look like they're going to get any real use out of that. And they may just wait out another Aegis, and like Fnatic it's reached that point where they're so built, especially the Gyro. Again, you can't even engage him. He's about to go buy a Demon Edge, most likely. We'll see if he does stop off and pick it up. Nope, just going to blow on by. He's got 3,300 gold in the bank. So we'll see what item he wants to pick up. There's the BKB bot on the Storm Spirit. And they're running out of targets, man. They're running out of people they can actually do damage to.
That's pretty much the recurring problem. Their lineup, like Fnatic's lineup, has a good damage split in terms of how much magic damage they have versus how much physical.
Yep.
But at the same time, that can backfire when your physical damage dealers aren't farmed enough to do enough to the heroes that have BKBs, and that's kind of what's happening right here. And a lot of that goes back to the very early game when we saw Era. I mean, he is still trying to recover. It's 31 minutes in.
Yep.
This lifestealer has 113 CS. That is below 5 CS a minute. That is really, really hard to deal with, especially considering right now the Gyrocopter is almost at 300. So he's closer to 10 CS a minute. And Hao just bought a Reaver, so I think he might just be going straight for the Satanic, just be totally unkillable, walk up the ramp, attack the tower, and just yell, "Come at me." I think that's pretty much the goal.
And right now, I mean, Fnatic, it's one of those bizarre games where they had so much momentum. It seemed to be in such a good situation leading things off. But look at the gold graph. It is, I mean, it's been slow. It hasn't been a gigantic, abrupt change. But TongFu is just more efficient in their farming. They can play much more aggressive when they choose to do so. Because Fnatic, the only way Fnatic's aggression really works is in the early phase, they can get away with running 2 or 3 around. But now that you're at 30 minutes, that's much more difficult to do. What you want to do in this situation is begin to just 5-on-5. And they're not bad in that department one little bit, especially if they get the jump on TongFu, who has 2 great single target initiators, which tend to be the best getting the jump on you. But they've just waited around so long that TongFu is just getting too full. Like they have too much stuff, too many items, and yeah, I mean, Hal's not far at all now from finishing that Satanic. I mean, he's gonna be there very, very soon.
And once that happens, even with Era's damage, I seriously doubt they'll be able to kill him. They'll need like a Hex before the BKB while the Satanic is like on in order to even kill him, which is a pretty hard window to find, but I think they could still kill him. It's just going to be very difficult because say you do focus Hao, right? You go into the fight, you hex him right away, you go in, you have a Storm for counter initiation, and you have a Bat Rider and a Bane. That's a really, really scary counter initiation squad, at least if you're in Fnatic shoes right now. But you kind of get this feeling of helplessness right now from Fnatic. I mean, really, what can they do? Can they walk in and take a fight against Hao with as farmed as he is? Because Era went essentially a mid-game item build, and he had to. I'm not saying that he really had a choice because he was so far behind, but because of the fact that he's gone a build like this, he wants to try to be active because he realizes his team's purpose is during the mid-game. Well, it's getting past mid-game now, and they haven't gotten enough. They needed a Rax. They haven't even killed the Tier 2 mid yet. And TongFu, during the ultra late, the way that Hao's building, this is the hardest of the hardest carry builds. Butterfly, Satanic, BKB, and probably into something like an MKB or a crit. That is about as hard carry as you get.
Yep, the way it feels is basically Hao decided it was time for the late game and didn't ask Fnatic, and Fnatic's not too happy about it. And yeah, he's got his Satanic done. He just finished his Satanic. His net worth is, I mean, the only person keeping pace is Prophet, and the problem is that we actually are going to see a tower end up getting destroyed. But, you know, the problem is, as farmed as Prophet is, he's not a hero who can just deal with a gyro on his own. And where are the other sources of damage? As you mentioned, Era having to go essentially, with a mid-game item build, and it worked. That's the thing. Fnatic was in very, very good shape. They had taken map control. They had put TongFu back on their back foot. A couple of bad decisions and a little bit of wasted time here and there, though. And, you know, this is what we talked about during the prelims whenever we casted TongFu. TongFu is just such an excellent team at playing from behind because they never get impatient. They don't feel pressed. They don't decide that they have to go do something because they're behind. If they feel like their composition is good enough to stand on its own legs 10 minutes from the time that they fall behind, they will just sit back and make you execute to finish them. And really, Fnatic just didn't.
More or less, and Fnatic are finally taking the initiative here too, which is a good thing to see. They're going towards the Roshan pit, but TongFu obviously know it's going to be up as well, and they have actually counter-smoked, but I don't believe there are any sentries down. Oh, here we go.
Banana going to be seen. He's way out front. Oh, what a coil! He got everyone with the waiting rift as well. Moo going to reinitiate. BKB is up, but the great initiation coming out of Haughty. How? He's hexed out. He's down to half health. He's used the Satanic already. Moo can do little but drop a Remnant, and now he's isolated out. He's silenced out, and he will drop. How's there, though? King J going to get the lasso out on Era. They actually chained the ultimates there. Not the best execution. Buybacks on both sides. Banana chasing him out. Wow, Moo coming from nowhere, coming from downtown. And buybacks aplenty on both sides. Roshan at stake here, and in the end, we actually end up with the exact same thing we started with, Fnatic ahead by 3 kills.
That initiation was the only reason that team fight went even a little bit well for Fnatic. I mean, what more could you ask for? The downside is Chen actually died, I believe, or didn't get to use his heal.
Yep.
Something happened to Chen and he didn't get to use his heal, which is a bit of a bummer. But they over-pursued. When you see double buyback after you win the initial engagement, you don't try to go back in, but here we go.
There's the infest out. We're going to see Moo in trouble. Roach still standing. Banana hexed out on top. In the meantime, the call down's going to reinitiate. Hand of God. Not enough to keep him alive. Hal now hit with the open wounds. Roach at about 1/5 health. And that's going to be another 2 for 2. Trading up, check that. Going to be 3 for 2 as Trixie tracks down the Bane. San Shang now in some trouble as the body block from Trixie's Treants locked him down just long enough for Fnatic to make it a double kill for the Prophet. And now Roshan might be their prize. And that was such excellent play there. Trixie using the Treants to body block and prevent the retreat and managing to clean up 2 because of it.
I don't understand where How was. Like, was How just in the pit hitting Roshan the whole time? Because they just completely avoided him, and it feels like, I think he got a double kill, and then they split the fight up, and then How decided, I guess, to go for Roshan because he thought the rest of his team maybe could hold off Fnatic, but that was definitely not the case. And we often talk about how farm is very important, but it also depends on who has your farm.
Right.
And How has basically all of their farm. He is almost doubling the next highest in terms of CS on his team.
Yep.
So if he's not actually in the fight and being active, Fnatic have a very, very good chance of being able to eliminate the other 4, and I think that's more or less what happened. So they give the Aegis to Trixie. Honestly, it would be better on Era, but of course he was dead. He couldn't really do anything about it. But winning those 2 engagements back-to-back, Fnatic definitely not out of this yet.
Honestly, you have to identify that as what it is. First of all, it was one of the most amazing puck initiations in tournament play I've ever seen. He caught everyone, and like you said, that was the reason they won there. Without that, that's probably a turnaround, especially after the buybacks. However, Haughty just playing a phenomenal game. He's actually picked up a sheepstick of his own. Having the Scythe of Ice is one more way to cope with this gyrocopter. And gyro is getting huge, make no mistake. 3,700 gold, but you want to talk about huge? How about nearly one-shot buying an MKB for Trixie? The guy's inventory, actually he just did, never mind, there's not almost. The guy now has an MKB. He is hitting very hard, 290-ish damage coming out of this Nature's Prophet. And it has really been the play of Trixie and Haughty that have held Fnatic together. And that's not to say the rest of the players haven't been doing well. It's just that the composition that they drafted required them to make some plays in some big situations. And they've gotten that out of 2 people, and that's these guys.
Definitely really solid performances out of them both. And Fnatic now smoked up. They want to try to go on mid. There's a DD on this puck as well. And like you said, he finished up that Hex. If they get one more decent engagement, considering it's 38 minutes in, right now the only person on the side of TongFu who has buyback is the gyrocopters. So it's getting to that stage where the fights are having more and more impact, and it's really anyone's to take. If Fnatic get that one good engagement, if Hani gets a coil and a silence like he did last time, and there's that kind of follow-up now with the Prophet having an MKB, they could very easily just snowball that into a Rax.
Hani gonna cross the river, and they will be spotted. There's a ward, yep, and they know it. So dewarded with that gem formerly possessed by Fnatic. They lost that, of course, when the Vino died, but for the moment, able to dodge out the gang. Now they're gonna go for it again. That's no tail up front. Now they're gonna make sure that they have their chain of initiation down. As we've seen time and time again, whenever they get the jump on TongFu, hit a couple of key targets, most notably the gyrocopter, being able to force him out of fights, that's whenever they're at their best. And he has 5,000 gold right now. I mean, take a look at the KD. Certainly Fnatic in great shape there. Net worth, the Prophet is keeping pace, but basically outside of the Prophet, at this point, Hal is doubling the farm of the Lifestealer. So, you know, there is going to come a point where, as good as the LS is in most situations, even though he's got a couple of core items, he's just not going to feel nearly as useful as he once did. And really, in terms of physical target or physical DPS against Hal, he's already there. There's just very little he's actually able to do to this Gyro, who has 27 armor, a butterfly, and in case he does get in trouble, a Satanic. So essentially, things are coming down. This Prophet is going to have to take over a lot of carry responsibility.
And that's why he goes for the MKB in this case, just to have some surefire damage on how, if push ever comes to shove, they can maybe take him down in the pinch. The one, I guess, upside to the fact that How is so farmed is, hey, he can only really buy one more item after the next one, right?
Right.
I mean, he's going to have a data list soon, and then he can go one more item, and then his inventory is pretty much full. But as I said, this is pretty much the de facto, I'm going to carry my team with 4 or 5 extremely expensive items, and then, of course, your boots and whatever else you decide to go for. But I don't know, it's interesting because looking at it on paper, you figure TongFu during the team fights are going to be nigh unstoppable just because of him. But then you see them win the Roche fight basically 2 times in a row, and that's with TongFu buying back. Sure, Fnatic did too, but it shouldn't really happen.
Right. Now it all comes down to positioning, and the bottom line is it was a great set of plays out of Fnatic at that Roche fight, and a couple of misplays, as you mentioned. Where the hell was Hal? He just, for whatever reason, was not a part of the second half of that engagement. So credit and fault due on both sides, but the result is Fnatic is on the aggressive. Hani has had a passenger for a while. Here we go, we're gonna jump on Hal, he's silenced out. BKB's there, Lasso trying to bail him out, and he forced staffed away. Hani now reinitiated upon, can they get him? Hand of God is not enough. Trixie has the Aegis popped away, and Era trying to retreat, will be doing so right into a call down, and now No Tail able to TP away as they lacked any kind of ability to stun. But in the end, Fnatic trying to play aggressive. That's what happens whenever they're just unable to drop the gyro and TongFu doesn't make any mistakes. The fact that he survived was a brilliant play made by whoever has the force staff. I didn't even see who had it, but somebody must, because that's what happened. There it is, Mr. Visage, Sansheng. Yeah. With the force staffing him to safety. He was so low, and if Gyro dies there, and I don't think he had, well, yeah, he may have had enough to buy back, but forcing a buyback would have been huge in itself. But a great play by Sansheng.
Well, not only that, but the counter initiation by King J. I mean, he was there almost instantly as well. I think he was actually lassoed onto the Lifestealer before they even pushed him out. So that's what I was saying before. It's like, yeah, you can Hex and you can go for him, but it's not like TongFu has nothing to stop you. They have a lot of single target disables and their range is great. So even if you think you're going to be able to catch out How, there's a good chance that his team's going to be there to help him pretty much immediately. And How does finish the daylist, which means that he only needs one more item. He can sell that Ring of Aquila, get a couple of 100 extra gold for that, and then just decide to make his final item, whatever that may be. So Fnatic, I feel like if their laning phase didn't go so poorly for them, and I don't mean poorly in the sense that they weren't able to find kills because No Tail still did, but poorly in the sense that Era had 10 CS at 7 minutes,
right.
This game would have been totally different by now because he would have had maybe an MKB himself, or his damage output, and at least in some sense, would be higher to the point where How, heck, he might have died there in that circumstance rather than getting away with about 10% HP. So Fnatic, they do need to find that opening, but the thing about TongFu is that they're really not giving it to them.
No, not at all. And You know, it's dire straits when you look at an era played lifestealer who is hitting for, when the armlet is toggled on, about 240 damage. And then you go, but that's not enough. When it's not enough because your gyrocopter with flak cannon is going to be pouring out 350-ish damage every single time he pulls the trigger, that's just something your supports can't stand up to. Poor Vino is going to end up being four-shotted by that, even though he's at a decent level at 13. Poor Chen can only take 3 shots before he drops to flak cannon. And the range at 1,000, I mean, he's just not going to be able to be anywhere near the vicinity of these fights.
Flak Cannon is going to start being like the one-shot no-tail ability.
Yeah.
No-tail's got 900 health. I'm pretty sure if he gets 1 or 2 crits,
yep,
it's just game over. Like, there's not really going to be anything he can do about it. And he doesn't have enough money to buy any other support items, which is kind of a big deal. And we were talking earlier about the Force Staff that the Visage has and the Medallion. The supports of Fnatic don't really have the luxury to afford those items. And Force Staffs can have a huge impact in the later game, just being able to force yourself out if you get called down, or be able to be in a better position so you don't get targeted in the first place. And Fnatic, they have been making the most with what they have, which in terms of overall CS and farm is not really that much. The amazing thing is that they're still managing to keep it very close in terms of the overall income, and most of that's due to the fact that Trixie is doing a monstrously good job at splitting the map and finding farm in a very, very tough situation, because normally a Nature's Prophet against a Storm, you don't want to be the Prophet, because you know that Moo can just go in and the rest of his team can be near to follow. So very well played game by Trixie so far, and he has picked up another Ultimate Orb, by the way, so I believe his next choice is going to be either a Scotty or a Manta, but I'm kind of leaning towards Scotty, actually.
After talking to them this morning, you and I spoke to them, we heard them extol the advantages of Scotty over most other Ultimate Orb items once you manage to get up your Scythe device. And I agree with you. I see him getting a Scotty. It's going to be able to tank him up a little bit. He will get some damage. Manta is just an item in this situation. Really, all you're gaining from it, other than a little bit of survivability, of course, you know, be able to split maybe if you want to push. However, it's mostly, I mean, you get the movement speed. And that's actually not my words. Those are the words of Era this morning, and why they often choose on heroes like a Prophet or so on and so forth, even on a Shadow Fiend, which is how it came up in conversation. Choose to get Scotty instead of a Manta in many situations. So anyway, both teams have been playing cautiously for quite some time. We're approaching 46 minutes in. The gold graph is still very, very even. Less than 1,500 gold separates these two teams. So, you know, the thing is, the gold graph and the experience is actually very much in favor of TongFu, which is a story in itself. But the gold graph is really kind of deceptive in games like this, because the composition of Fnatic has well had their time of greatness eclipsed. Like, the window of opportunity that they drafted to capitalize on has closed a long time ago. And what it's going to take for them to be able to make things happen now is they just have to out-strategize. They have to outplay TongFu. If all things are equal, TongFu has a composition that should win at this stage of the game.
Absolutely. And the weird thing about it, actually, is if Era gets another item, which he's sitting at 4,700 gold right now, I'm assuming his next item choice is going to be MKB, so Trixie and him both have one. If that happens, they might actually have enough damage to take down Hao. The question is, how good is the initiation going to be, and can they focus him hard enough before King J and everyone else on the side of TongFu is able to help him out? Because if they can, Hao not being in a team fight is an instant win for Fnatic, because like I said, most of the gold difference that they have is pretty much Hao. He's got 557 CS at 47 minutes in. That's completely insane. And he's not any tankier than he was earlier.
Yep.
Because he didn't buy another tank item, of course, after the Satanic. He just went for damage. And he's got actually 6,300 gold right now. And TongFu going for Roshan. No contention at all coming out of Fnatic. That's cheese. This might be a problem.
Yeah, that's... I mean, I guess I'm a little at a loss. Like, that's a fight that they should feel confident taking. Like, the big threat of TongFu's lineup is becoming how easily they can crack your tier 3s. There's only one tier 2 still remaining. Just how unbelievably strong Flak Cannon is, because Flak Cannon activates when you attack buildings as well as heroes. So what they're going to be able to do is slow push to death. They have two of the best single target initiators in the entire game, an immense amount of range since they have the Blink Dagger and almost the Force Staff now on the Bad Rider. But again, it really comes down to the Storm Spirit. He already has a BKB and the Scythe of Ice and and Orchid Malevolence. He has the ability by himself to shut down 3 heroes if he manages to catch them out of position. So what they can do is just walk down a lane, slow push, let Hal walk up to the edge of the steps, activate Flak Cannon. That'll clear the entire Fnatic squad away unless they just want to be taking mass amounts of damage for free. So it forces them to either 100% commit with one hero, which will be Puck, or it'll force them to walk forward and try to stand and fight. And that's when TongFu's lineup begins to shine, because then you have 2 heroes in the Bat and the Storm, and because of the items they built, can literally between the two account for 4 heroes on the side of Fnatic.
Well, the initiation range alone is a problem.
Yeah.
That's something that Fnatic, I think, are probably having the hardest time with, because if you're playing Fnatic style right now, and you're trying to split push, and you're trying to either do that or take an engagement where you can get some kind of blink initiation, with the reach of TongFu, their ability to react is some of the best that you're ever going to see in terms of their hero picks, especially the Storm. That's the one that is the biggest deal here. And Mu, even though he's had not really the best start, he started off 0-2, and he was level 5 like 9 minutes into the game. Definitely not something you want. They have fully recovered, and Mu has actually played fantastically during the mid game. Like his target choice, just his overall counter initiations have been really good, and they are smoked up inside of Fnatic's woods. They're not going to find anyone. Fortunately for Fnatic, they're all going to be able to teleport back to base and be safe. But this is pretty much TongFu's time. Like they have, oh wow, he just goes into the base for Era.
And Era sides down. He's down to half health. Yes, they get him. TongFu able to get the biggest pick off they could have possibly hoped for. Bane taking the last hit on the death, and that is crippling. He has buyback. But if he buys back, they're all in. There's the glyph. Buyback's out. This is going to be TongFu's time to shine. And they've got the entire team pinned back inside of their base. Hal doing mass amounts of damage. Utterly crippling in the amount of damage he can do. And just look at the tower melt. Visage Familiars and nothing but right clicks from Hal. They have to commit here. This is exactly what I was saying they would do. It's an all or nothing. They can't hang back and defend. They have to just make up their mind, otherwise you're going to see Mu jump them. Here we go. There's the lasso onto the Vino. He's going to be brought back, and now Mu's in there. Going to see the feeds grip onto Era. What immaculate placement out of Banana. Era's going to be scythed out and brain sapped to death. The Aegis does get popped, but that was the last buyback Era had. Trixie Nightmare, they're just going to wait for help. He's going to be Vortex back, and that'll be that. No tail, pursued back and cleaned up. Buyback out of profit, but he has very little help. And TongFu, not done. They're going to go take double racks. Hell, they're just going to push to tier 4s. 56 seconds until the Life Stealer is back up. And Hal, with his Satanic still available, yeah, he's just going to activate the Satanic, lay into the creeps with Flak Cannon. And now down goes one tier 4. The second tier 4 already down to half health. 40 seconds, there's the initiation. Attempted initiation of Hani. They honestly didn't even blink. We see Hal scythed out, he's going to be netted down. Now we're going to see Vino picked off again. Got the ulti off, got it on a couple. Mu taking a lot of damage from that Prophet. Hani though, face shifting out, trying to buy himself some time. Trixie going to be pursued out by Mu, and GG! A long one in comparison to our first game. Fnatic looked like they had this game, if not in the bag, at least in control, Draskell.
Yeah, their lineup, I really did like their lineup during the early game. Fnatic, they started off with a strategy very similar to what TongFu did in game 1. It was pretty standard, at least in terms of a push style. And just from the get-go, TongFu knew exactly what to lane, exactly how to make it so they wasted some time, just enough to the point where Fnatic didn't have the firm foothold that they really want with a lineup like that.
Right.
And small things like that can definitely change the impact of a game.
51 minutes, 46 seconds, the official game time, 22-25. The final kill score, TongFu blanks Fnatic 2-0. Let's throw it back to James and crew and let them break it down.
Thank you, AC and Draskell. So there we have it. TongFu picks up the win 2-0, and the longest game we've had so far in the main event here. But I've got some stuff I want to talk about. But overall, guys, what did you make of the match?
TongFu is just an extremely resilient team, and Banana proving that he is a fantastic support. He kind of halted the momentum for Fnatic. They were on a roll, just getting a lot of pickoffs with the early boost of travel and blink on the puck, as well as the life stealer going crazy, and he was just at the right place at the right time, saving Mu on the bottom lane next to the secret shop, or next to the side shot rather, and then saving the gyrocopter next to the T3. That just halted a lot of the aggression from Fnatic, and that's where a lot of their strength comes into play. And then at the very end, he had the BKB grip on Era that was his buyback death too, so that kind of sealed the game.
Yeah, Mark, what did you make of the game?
Exactly the same as Ben just pointed out. Banana was great on his position with Bane when they were down. And then Fnatic, they had a Venomancer on the Chen. They didn't have the shutdown ability in their supports. And TongFu really utilized that in having Storm Spirit and a Bat Rider. So there's no way of shutting them down. And Storm Spirit had a lot of free reign jumping back and forth. He died in some of the fights, but he bought back out, came in, swooped up every kill afterwards. Very good play by TongFu.
Bruno?
There is something interesting to point out. This Pac-Chen Lifestealer combination, this is actually the 4th time to see it today in 5 games. It's kind of the trend of the day. I could say the trend of the tournament as well. Before the tournament, there was just 14 matches total with the 3 playing together, and it was a 50% win rate, 7-7. This tournament, until this game, it was 4-0, and finally now we get the first defeat of this lineup. How did they do it? With great initiation. You need 2 guys initiating. Bad Rider, Storm Spirit. You can't stop them both. You can't jump them both. If you get one, the other will get you.
Yeah, that seemed to be the story. Some of the stuff that I found a little bit. Well, okay, so I want to talk about Hani. All right, yeah, I'm gonna unleash. Okay, Hani on the puck did overall a great job, but when he went boots of travel, I felt that was asking a little bit too much, because the boots of travel is like, okay, you've got a life stealer and you can go into any lane and potentially get picks, which they did onto the Storm Spirit. But I felt that maybe he needed to go for an item which would work there and then in terms of actually in team fights. I don't want to say Lincoln's, but if you just pick up an ultimate orb, you could either go into Lincoln's if you're constantly fighting, or maybe a sheepstick if you manage to win some good team fights.
You wanted your other side of ice, yeah?
Yeah, and then actually the Lifestealer, even though he had mid-game items, in terms of he didn't have his Santin Yasha complete by then, but I think he had an armlet that early on. He actually could have fought alongside the puck, so you could have forced the fight a little bit more and be like, okay, we know you're going to counter-initiate with your Storm Spirit and also your Bat Rider, but we feel pretty confident in our Nature's Prophet. We'll pick up a lot of farm anyway, and the puck is a little bit more aggressive in terms of, and can do more in those team fights, because they went for this, we're going to pick you off as long as possible, and it was a farm race, but eventually Gyro won it. So I felt that take that puck, remove the boots of travel, turn him into a bit more of a team fighter, and actually look to get that life stealer involved, because just mid the game when you get that infest on the right target, we saw it at Roshan, it does matter. And the boots of travel, for me, TongFu played around it pretty nicely.
Yeah, exactly. That's where Banana came into play and was just baiting out their carries, basically. Like you were saying, if they had Chen and Venomancer on their lineup, they could have gone for a pushy kind of lineup instead of going for the all-out gank with the boots of travel and the puck alone. And you could go 2 ways. They could gank with the Furion, obviously, but they could also just have pushed with Venomancer, Chen, and Nature's Prophet and just brute forcing their way onto the towers instead and utilizing other items rather than boots of travel. I definitely agree with that. I do, however, like that some teams, Fnatic especially, picks off boots of travel, because we don't see a lot of teams utilize boots of travel early on, maybe for good reason.
Yeah, but either way, that's how it went down. And we do have some highlights as well, so we'll go over these. And this is TongFu's time to shine, I hope, because I'm assuming it's them. Oh, this is when Hao gets actually cheeked up, and then you can see the Force Staff comes in from Banana, and also Fiend's Grip onto Era, and Hao just like instantly knows he's going to walk back in, pop Satanic, and everyone drops. And there was actually an Aegis there on the Hani on the Furion, who did manage to get away. No tail or TP out, but overall, just having Hao survive that fight was huge, because if he went down, it could have been Fnatic to have a little bit more of an advantage that they needed.
I think he had buyback though, but I think TongFu in this game showed that they played a sort of 4 protect 1 kind of strategy, because if you notice the farming, everything went the way of Gyrocopter. Bat Rider didn't have much farm, Bane certainly didn't have any farm whatsoever, but Gyro had 618 creep kills, and the way they organized these fights where they just baited Hao out and had everyone jump in right after. And as you were pointing out, Banana's great force. No, that wasn't Banana. That was San Sheng's great force stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was the Visage. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely great play by TongFu. They played it the way they had to after the Fnatic's early dominating performance.
I don't think they should have had as much Roshan control as they did, though. Fnatic was up at one point, and they were just seeking kills in the top lane, and TongFu just sneaked in a Roshan, and they didn't do it quickly by any means. They didn't have any excellent Roshan heroes. I think they had a medallion, though, so it was a little bit faster than maybe Fnatic expected, but that was what really started the ball rolling for TongFu in the middle late game.
And Fnatic had a ton of heroes that could actually scout out Roshan and make sure that, keep tabs on Roshan and never let TongFu get it. They had, Treants from Nature's Prophet, they had Venomancer wards, they had Chen creeps. There's no way if they played this calm and collected that TongFu should be allowed to take Roshan without Fnatic even noticing.
Well, maybe Fnatic didn't turn up and play their best today, but either way, they put up a great performance. But unfortunately, it's TongFu that won the game 2-0, and we're going to hear from him now as we're going to go down to the show floor with Casey.
Hey guys, we have Banana here, and I also want to introduce you to my friend Josh from Dotaland.net. It's good to have you both here. We really appreciate it. Congratulations. And my first question is, you came out of the gate 2-0. Is that what you were expecting against Fnatic, and how did you do it?
首先问你是你们第一场就2-0打赢了 Fnatic， 觉得打这场比赛之前觉得会有这样的结果吗？
没有，我们觉得我们 Fnatic 是非常厉害的对手，我们赛前做了很多准备，然后觉得他们非常难对付。
I says that it was pretty unexpected. They felt that Fnatic would be a really tough opponent, and they had done a lot of preparations, and yeah.
So another thing I've been noticing when I'm watching this in progress is how you work together as a team. And I know you've had some roster changes recently. When you bring in new team players, how do you integrate them into the team as a whole?
说看你们觉得团队挺结合的，就磨合得很好，然后挺团结的，然后你们最近也换过人，然后说是最后怎么磨合过来的？
因为我们现在这5个人就私底下关系都比较好，相处的都就是平时都生活在一起，然后一起玩、一起吃饭什么的，就是私下关系比较好的。
所以说私下关系好才能打得好。
就是相处的比较融洽，然后就是平时就是打的时候就想法比较一致，就是执行力就比较强。
So he says the main thing is that they all get along outside of the game. They're all good friends, and by getting along well and being good friends, it means that they tend to think together and be able to execute together.
Yeah, they really become part of a family. So I know Navi is next, and I understand that you've practiced with Navi before. What are your thoughts looking ahead to Navi, and what was it like practicing with them?
你们下一场应该是对着 Navi。那么 Navi 今年来中国的时候，你们有没有跟他们练过？
我们在那个比赛上跟他们打过，然后就是1胜1负吧，但是比较关键性的淘汰赛输给他们了，所以我们这次很想报仇。
So first, he says that earlier this year in official tournament setting, they had played against Navi and ended up being eliminated by them. So they really want to be able to get revenge for that. 然后还有就是对下一场打 Navi 还有什么别的看法吗
？Navi 是我们觉得就是这次比赛就是夺冠热门，是比较最难对付的对手之一吧，所以我们肯定会认真的准备对他们的比赛。
And as for what he thinks about Navi as a whole, they're one of the favorites to win it all here. So they're definitely a really tough opponent. So they're gonna.
But seeking revenge, them's fighting words. I like that. Last question. This actually comes from my new friend Patrick from the audience. We went out and chatted with some of the fans in the audience, and he wants to know, and I quote, "How are you so good?"
这个是来自外面现场观众的一个问题，然后问是你们到底是怎么达到这么厉害的境界？
就是因为我们喜欢 Dota 这个游戏，热爱这个游戏，然后加上就是我们平时训练比较刻苦，打的很多，就是可能水平会比较好。
So he says it stems from a love for the game. They just play a lot, they train a lot, and so this is the result of hard work.
And that's what makes it fun to watch. Thank you both so much, Banana. Congratulations. Good luck in the next round. Thank you again, Josh. And another thing, guys, that I learned when I was out in the audience, I now know what a brony is. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it. James?
Brony.
Was that a Brody?
Yeah.